The Olympic torch is in the south of England this week. All schools have been there cheering on the procession, and I was there among them. It's funny, isn't it, that we celebrate with an Olympic torch, a relay, and that just wasn't a part of the original Olympics at all. The Olympic torch relay is symbolic of the German Nazi regime, because it was during the 1936 Berlin Games that the first relay took place. So you could say that the use of the torch symbolises a totalitarian regime, and it's therefore very appropriate nowadays. I was very much struck by the procession of vehicles which accompanied the Olympic torch. There were several coaches representing big corporations. Coca-Cola was very prominent indeed, and Coca-Cola gave out a variety of freebies to the kids. The kids, of course, would, as a result, associate the glory of the Olympics with Coca-Cola. There was another coach advertising Lloyd's TSB Bank. By contrast, my colleague said that the powers that be have come down very hard indeed on very small businesses which dare to use the word Olympic at all. So a cafe advertising something harmless, such as an Olympic sandwich, or even which stated that it would be open for cream teas after the Olympic torch procession, will feel the full force of the law. And that too is a perfect fit, because if the elite succeed in bringing in a new world order, big corporations will rule the roost, and the little man, the small businessman, will be sidelined. There's been endless speculation about these Olympic Games. Will there be a real terrorist event? Will there be a false flag terrorist event? Will the global elite stage something dramatic like a fake alien landing in order to usher in a new world order? Ordo ab chao, order out of chaos. That's the theory, that the elite will cause mayhem, then suggest world government as the solution. And it's not so far-fetched when you remember that Ronald Reagan famously made a speech about how an alien landing could unite us all and bring about the change that is desired.
I couldn't help at one point in my discussions privately with General Secretary Gorbachev, when you stop to think that we're all God's children wherever we may live in the world, I couldn't help but say to him, just think how easy his task and mine might be in these meetings that we held if suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe.
Well, my prediction, and I hope I'm right, but of course I might not be, is that nothing like that will happen. I reason like this. London is the fraud capital of the world. Most of the world's billionaires flock to London, the capital of fraud. London is the golden goose of the global elite. Would they want to blow it up or contaminate it forever? Somehow I doubt it. What they will want to do, I suspect, is to knock down conspiracy theorists and ridicule them. A lot of the truth about 9/11 is coming out now, and more people are beginning to be sceptical about whether we were told the true story. I understand that there's a BBC programme which has been scheduled for autumn viewing, and that it's going to be in the vein of criticising conspiracy theorists and making them look ridiculous. Now, I think they're trying to bait the conspiracy theorists, and I'm just going to show you why I think that. This is an article that appeared in one of the papers. Keep an eye on the skies for saucers during the Olympic Games, warns a former MOD UFO expert. It's a chap called Nick Pope, and he says massive summer events like the Olympics would be a prime time for an alien encounter. Ministry of Defence has planned for the worst outcomes, attack and invasion. We should be prepared for even the most seemingly unfathomable. So he says, Nick Pope, who has more than 2 decades under his belt apparently at the Ministry of Defence, said mass summer events like the Olympic Games in London would be a prime time for crafts from other worlds to present themselves to mankind. He warned, with the summer of mass events we are all on high alert for terrorism, but we must also cast our eyes further afield and be prepared for even the most seemingly unfathomable. You know, this is just so preposterous, it's unbelievable. If there are aliens, and, you know, I can't say there aren't, obviously, it seems likely that with the universe being as large as it is, there are other life forms, but the likelihood of them saying, oh, I don't know, this is interesting, there's Olympic Games on in London, let's land there, shall we, is so preposterous, and yet it is being put out by the media, and you have to ask yourself the question, why? Well, I think the answer is that they're trying to bait the conspiracy theorists. They're really worried about the fact that there is a huge awakening going on in the world at the moment. People are realizing what is happening, and they're trying to do what they can to, you know, persuade people that these conspiracy theories are rubbish. They won't be justified in ridiculing conspiracy theorists, of course. The conspiracy theorists have plenty of reason to fear an attack of some kind. There's been plenty of predictive programming in a variety of different blockbuster films like V for Vendetta. You'll see lots of examples of that on YouTube. If you just put something into the search engine like London Olympics, false flag, etc., there's plenty of analysis of that. Some of it is a bit far-fetched, but some of it is really quite obviously there and meant to be there. Predictive programming is supposedly meant to prepare the public for future atrocities by suggesting the forthcoming atrocity in films. And there are lots of examples of so-called predictive programming. There were lots of them before 9/11. The one I've put up is the most obvious example. I don't think anybody could dispute that, you know, the fact that that came immediately before 9/11 is just too much of a coincidence. It couldn't possibly be by chance, I don't think. But personally, although I accept the theory of predictive programming, I don't think myself that any of this is predictive programming. What I think happens is that the global elite consider themselves to be far superior to everybody else, and the knock-on effect of them thinking themselves superior is that they become a little bit like boastful adolescents trying to outdo each other in daring deeds. So when they produce something which is later interpreted as predictive programming, I think they're just sending a message to their pals saying, just look at me, how clever I am. These morons will never notice what I've done. Yes, my friends, they're laughing at us. They have no empathy, and they think they're a cut above everybody else. They can't really empathise, and they have no conception of the preoccupations of the ordinary man or woman struggling to make ends meet, struggling to cope with endless workplace targets, struggling to look after families. So it's easy for them to feel superior and to boast. How many people are even aware of the sign on the bus which was blown up in Tavistock Square on 7/7? Outright terror, bold and brilliant, it said. It's always bothered me, that sign being there on the side of the bus in plain view. Outright terror, bold and brilliant. Was it supposed to be an advert for a film? If so, where's the name of the film? And why did nobody comment on it? Why did nobody ask questions? No, I think it was a member of the global elite cocking a snook at Joe Public and saying, "Look how clever I am, and look how stupid you are." The BBC will no doubt in the autumn produce a programme taking apart all the conspiracy theories. But it's true that there are a lot of clues about future events in films and things like that. And it's also true that there is a lot of symbolism. You've only got to look at the Olympic Park itself, the pyramid structures with lights at the top like the all-seeing eye. And if you're still doubtful, look at the Olympic mascots, Wenlock and Mandeville. Cute they are not. Sinister, yes, certainly, with the all-seeing eye there in the middle of their face. But I think that this time they're just trying to have a laugh at all these conspiracies. However, it is true that historically the Olympic Games often has the effect of changing a country in some way. Now, I've made a table of past Olympic Games where you can see this, and I'm just going to talk you through that. So here you've got, starting with the Olympic Games in 1936, the purpose of that was to showcase the superiority of the Aryan race. You didn't have very much happening then after that. 1940, 1944, cancelled due to World War II. Then 1948, the Austerity Games. Then 1952, Helsinki, Finland, just world records broken. 1956, Melbourne. There were financial worries, political worries over the Suez crisis, but it came to be known as the Friendly Games. 1960, Rome, no significant political events. 1964, Tokyo, improvements in transport systems, bullet trains were introduced. So far, after the war, you had a sort of period of respite, really. People were recovering from the war, and the global elite were not in the, they did not wield so much power as they do now, because they were still reeling from the effects of the war, etc. And therefore not very much was happening there. And then in 1968 you've got the beginnings of things starting to happen in Mexico. There was a massacre, 40 people were killed. 1972, Munich, there was the Palestinian Black September group, which took 9 Israeli athletes and 2 hostages were killed in the initial break-in a standoff which lasted for 18 hours, so that was really pretty bad. The Montreal Olympics, there was controversy over the Queen attending and financial disaster. Moscow, United States protests at the invasion of Afghanistan. 1984, Los Angeles, there were gang sweeps. South Korea, the purpose of that was to showcase South Korea. It was a coming out party of the newly industrialized nation, and democracy was introduced to stop protests. Then in 1992, Barcelona, you had huge investment in infrastructure. So in the period, you can say, between 1964 and, really starting 1968 and 1988, you had quite a lot of problems coming in the Olympic Games. The desire for peace that had come about as a result of the last war is now beginning to dissipate, I think. And now you've got the next phase starting, 1992, Barcelona. This is the beginning of the indebtedness of countries like Spain. So in Barcelona in 1992, there was a huge investment in infrastructure. That's the important thing there, because that has prepared for what is now happening, with Spain being in a terrible state. Then 1996, Atlanta, They brought in corporate sponsorship, so this is the beginning of the corporations there. And Greece 2004, again, cost was a significant factor in those Olympic Games, and this has prepared for the debts which Greece has run up as well. So then you've got Beijing, where there was a displacement of citizens and a lack of compensation for that. Jail if you protested. So that's, again, heralding the sort of society that is coming in throughout the world, because I think they're trying to model themselves on the Chinese example. And now we don't know what's going to happen in London. Incidentally, it's quite interesting that in 1948 they had the austerity Olympics, but now at a time when we are enduring austerity times in Great Britain, they don't talk about the 2012 Olympics as being the austerity Olympics. And you have to ask yourself whether they are overspending on this. But you would expect something to happen in the 2012 Olympics from the pattern that we've seen in the table I showed you. This is an important time in history after all. Well, my friends, it is happening. It's happening in front of our eyes. G4S, the notorious security firm run by Goldman Sachs Bank, yes, that's what G4S stands for, needs more help with security, we're told. Well, bail them out then, says Cameron. And goodness knows how many army personnel will come on the streets as a result, which all gets us used to having troops on the streets of London. Think about those poor blighters who have got surface-to-air missiles sighted on their roofs. Just imagine how you'd feel with surface-to-air missiles on your roof. There are ships coming up the Thames, aircraft carriers supposedly to protect us. And of course there's always the drones. Drones are really not evident in the UK at the moment, but they're all over the United States apparently. Drones come in all shapes and sizes. You can have small insect drones, and you can have drones the size of aircraft, as well as blimps as well. That's another form of drone. They're there to spy on the public. We'll have them hovering over our back gardens in the UK now, spying on us to make sure we're following all the rules. Organic gardening with free-range hens? The drones will find out and put a stop to that. You think this is far-fetched, no doubt, but it's a reality in the United States, according to some of the news, alternative news programs I've watched. So I think that what the Olympic Games 2012 is really for is just that. It's to ratchet up the police state in the UK. When I read about all the coffin liners in the US, when I first read about them, I was sceptical at first, and then I discovered the fact that these are genuinely coffin liners because I looked at the company which produces them. They hold up to 4 bodies, or alternatively, one clinically obese body. Now, according to one whistleblower by the name of Ben Fellows, the UK government has ordered 200,000 of them for the London Olympics to cater for 800,000 corpses. No wonder the conspiracy theorists are hard at work. As for me, I do think something dreadful is planned for the, quote, useless eaters, as they call us, but I don't think it'll happen during the 2012 Olympics. I think this event is designed simply to justify an enormous ratcheting up of global power. So, in summary, if drones become a feature of our landscape here in the UK, if they start to stockpile piles of coffin liners, as they do in the US, then just realise that the Olympics was the excuse, the big excuse for bringing it all in. I think this is the change that's going to come about as a result of the London Olympics, and I think the other change is that they're hoping to bring in is to discredit all conspiracy theorists.